your host, Andrew Romanella.
When you play Battle in Mario Kart and you don't turn off any of the items, there are bananas everywhere. I mean, it's like you're losing your balloons because you're slipping on bananas left and right. Bananas everywhere. What's going on, everybody? Welcome into another edition of The Rome Show here on 12ouncesports.com. Broadcasting live on YouTube, on X, on Roku, and Amazon TV. I'm your host, Andrew Romanella. We got a great Thursday show for you planned here. It is March 6th, 2025. If you want to get in on the action, YouTube or X, it's super simple. Go to the live feed on either and head to the comments section and let us know your thoughts. I know I put in the title today that it was going to be a discussion on Jack Hughes' injury for the New Jersey Devils. Before I could even start the show, Chris Wassel, DFS, wrote in big injuries. Yeah, multiple for the Devils. It's going to be a rough week. Yep. No, I agree, Chris. And I agree that if everyone else wants to comment live, they do the same on X and YouTube, the social media, The Rome Show 1, Instagram, Facebook, X, TikTok, whatever social media, follow us there or follow the mothership on 120Z Sports. We said we'll talk injury. New Jersey Devils, Jack Hughes, best player, most points, most goals, out for the year. Not good for New Jersey's home team. Baseball making more changes. Well, this time it's to their Veterans Committee for the Hall of Fame. And it brought up some annoyances. Let's put it that way. We talked Pete Rose recently and the fact that Commissioner Rob Manfred is listening to argument made by the Rose family and his attorney about getting Pete Rose off the banned list and potentially in the Hall of Fame. The Seattle Seahawks have released one wide receiver that is the second best wide receiver in franchise history, and another requested a trade that has been their best wide receiver for 5 of the last 6 seasons. So we must talk DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. If we have time, I'd like to get into Myles Garrett, but we can leave that for tomorrow or another day because we get all these trades. We have all these contract restructurings in the National Football League. We have all of these moves being made ahead of the March 12 start to the official league year. And yet this offseason, in my opinion at least, started with Myles Garrett telling the Cleveland Browns that he no longer wanted to be a Cleveland Brown. Myles Garrett, with 2 years and $50 million left on a 5-year, $125 million contract that he signed in 2020, does not want to be a Brown anymore. Myles Garrett does not believe in the direction that the Cleveland Browns are going in. And Myles Garrett has said he does not want to do this just because of the money. He wants to do this because the next part of his career, he wants to be about winning Super Bowls. So as this NFL offseason has really started to shape up, you had the combine last weekend. You've had teams deciding who they're bringing back, who they're not bringing back. We got trades and releases all over the place during this 7 to 10 day period from start of combine to start of league year. And some big names are starting to hit the press. So Myles Garrett being one of them, and then another defensive end yesterday secured the bag, as the kids may say, and that's Raiders defensive end Max Crosby, who was rewarded yesterday with a contract extension of 3 years, $106.5 million. Okay. Max Crosby now becomes the highest paid non-quarterback in the history of the National Football League. Okay. And he is now locked up to be a Las Vegas Raider till the 2029 season. Max Crosby was a 4th round. You heard that correctly. 4th round draft pick in 2019. Been seeing a lot of stories in the last day circulate about this. Was only recruited by one Division I school at a high school. I believe he went to Eastern Michigan. Obviously, 4th-round draft pick, so not insanely highly touted coming out of college. But to go from a lower level recruit by the nature of standards now when it comes to what offers you have if you're a 4-star or a 5-star recruit in college football or basketball, Max Crosby has made a legitimate name for himself, and it's very impressive. Great decision by the Oakland Raiders to lock up this player. I personally believe that if you secure both the offensive and the defensive line in your plans for long-term success, then you can secure up the quarterback. Then you can secure up the running back, the wide receiver, and get deeper. But without lines, right? Without a defensive and an offensive line, without difference maker type players that can cause for a double team, that can make an entire offense have to scheme for them, like Max Crosby does, it's really hard to build the rest of your team. And coming into this offseason, outside of the fact that they fired their head coach Antonio Pierce just a year and a half into his opportunity, after taking over as an interim the year before and kind of proving that he deserved the job, nonetheless, that kicked off the offseason for the Las Vegas Raiders. And then it rolled into, seriously though, what's the quarterback situation? You hire Pete Carroll as your head coach, which is probably a good idea based on the fact that you're trying to create some sustainability in the organization. So I think this is the next best thing. If you believed you needed a new head coach, which you went out and addressed, and you know you don't have the quarterback in the building right now that you necessarily want, though there might be some options out there like a Sam Darnold or maybe a try to trade for a Matthew Stafford or some other pieces, why don't we go and shore up some of the most important positions on our roster and one of the best players in the league? And now, okay, you have somebody that other players can get on board with wanting to come play for or with. Hey, you know what? Las Vegas is a real option. Maybe they're not fully set in their quarterback. Maybe Pete Carroll's the oldest coach in the National Football League. But I'll tell you what, it still feels like they're trending in the right direction. It feels like over the course of the next 5 years of the extension now total for Max Crosby, we could have a chance here. And I got to imagine playing with, over the last 6 years, 5 years really, a guy that has amassed 59 and a half total sacks, top 5 or 7 over the course of that time, has established himself as one of the best players in the league. I got to imagine if you know a franchise is willing to recommit to a player like that after an under 500 season because they believe that that player long-term is a huge aspect of the franchise, you want to see that. That's what you want to see as a player. You don't want to see what happened with the New York Football Giants and Saquon Barkley, because that doesn't give you belief that if you're somebody that signs with that franchise, you can go get your money that you deserve in a contract extension or a second contract, because that franchise hasn't really proven that faith. Whereas on the flip side, you look at other players like the Philadelphia Eagles and, as we mentioned yesterday, Saquon Barkley, and then you look at what they did with Zach Braun yesterday as well. So much like the Las Vegas Raiders, the Philadelphia Eagles, who a year prior to the 2024 season in the offseason, signed Zach Braun to a 1-year, $3.5 million contract. And the idea was, he's going to play some linebacker. He's going to play some special teams. He's going to fill the gaps in the roles where needed. Well, this man just only, became an all-pro, okay? He had 151 tackles, 3.5 sacks, 11 tackles for losses, and 5 forced fumbles last year on his 1-year, $3.5 million prove-it deal. And the Philadelphia Eagles, who realized that Braun really captained, especially from a leadership standpoint, and we just mentioned the play standpoint, the Philadelphia Eagles on the defensive side of the ball They rewarded him with a 3-year, $51 million contract, 34 of those millions guaranteed. And that's what I mean about the Max Crosby extension. That's what you want from a franchise. You want to go play for franchises that you see are rewarding their players. And sometimes that reward comes before you have to get to contract negotiations, before you have to get to the last year of your rookie deal, before you have to get to, I'm going to stay out of training camp because I believe that the last 2 years and $20 million left on my deal is not even close to what I should be making based on the first 3 years of my deal. Whatever it is, you want to play for a franchise that wants to reward you for your great work. And that's not just sports, that's life. I literally had this conversation with my boss the other day. I'm like, dude, don't you want me to stay here? Well, like if I was in sales and I sold the most of our product, I would most likely make the most amount of money. And I shouldn't have to come into someone's office and tell them I deserve more money because my work is really good. No, it's the opposite. As an employee, you want to be really good at your job and you want your organization, your business, your boss, your superior, you want them to notice that. You want them to reward that. You want them to come to you and say, hey, you know what, Andrew? Here's an extra $2,000 for the work you've done the last 2 years. Hey, you know what, Johnny? We see how much effort you've been putting in. Why don't you take 3 days off the 4th of July week and go enjoy some family time? That is what you want as an employee. So no wonder over the last 10 years, the Philadelphia Eagles, have figured it out. Not only are they really great at scouting and development, not only are they really great at developing the talent that they already have, not only are they really good at making changes, so when they fire a coach that won them the Super Bowl, they can hire another one that can win them a Super Bowl. All of that stuff being true is the reason why the Eagles have been great, but then you add in this really important factor. They don't let good people leave their building. And if a good person is in their building and they believe they can keep helping them win, they're going to reward them. And they might have released others this week that you're like, oh, wow, I can't believe that. At the end of the day, you can see the success is in the method. And a lot of franchises wait till their best player gets to a point where they're almost annoyed that they have to ask for a contract extension. Whereas yesterday, the Raiders, the Eagles, and I've seen others do it in other sports too, those franchises that get ahead of it essentially almost are doubling down on the player wanting to be there. Because now the player feels loved, feels like they got what they needed, got what they wanted, got what they earned, and they want to show up to work every day because you rewarded them for what they've put in. And the last thing I'll say is I read a quote from one of the general managers. I believe it was the Raiders. And he said, we're paying you not for what you have done, but for what you're going to do. And I think that's beautiful. It is a mix of both. You're getting rewarded money-wise for what you have already become in the league. But generally, outside of like the game of baseball, why would I give you a contract extension for 5 years if I didn't believe you were only going to get better or at least stay exactly the same and hopefully bring us a lot of winning? And that is the bottom line here. Both of these dudes, and add Saquon and any other really good name player that a team is re-signing, is being brought back for one thing: to keep creating greatness. Hopefully we create greatness every day here on the Rome Show, 12OZ Sports. It is commercial break time, but that doesn't mean the show's over. It just means we take a quick hiatus for 2 to 3 minutes. We come back, and then we give you some more elite sports takes. When we get back, we're going to talk Seattle Seahawks because I mentioned it in the open. They are releasing Tyler Lockett, second best receiver all time in organization history. And DK Metcalf has requested a trade. So there's a lot going on in Seattle. Plus, Baseball Veterans Committee has made some rule changes that I would like to talk about. So you got to stick with us after this commercial break because it's 12-ounce sports. It's you. It's Andrew. It's called The Rome Show. And it's back after this.
Welcome to MyBookie. You're ready to create an account and start making money. And we're here to help. And remember, you can get a bonus of up to $1,000 on your first deposit. Now you're ready to bet. Just go to mybookie.ag, visit the sportsbook, click on your bet, and input the amount you want to risk or win in the bet slip. Yes, it's that easy. Just remember, at MyBookie, you play, you win, you get paid.
Need tickets to that next event? Well, at 12 Ounce Sports, we've got them with soccer anywhere in the world. Tickets to any venue, any sport. Want to go to NCAA or NFL football matches? We've got them.
Yeah.
Baseball at every level. Every Power 5 matchup is available. Don't forget, costumes and paint are optional. What's that? You want to go to Broadway? We have those too. Want to jam out? Every concert, every artist. That's right, at 12 Ounce Sports, we've got the tickets for less. 12ozsports.com/tickets. That's 12ouncesports.com/tickets.
Yeah, the Rome Show. 12ouncesports.com. X, YouTube, Amazon, Roku, all the places, people. Super easy to find the show. Once you find it, hit subscribe, follow, do all of those things, and you'll be able to listen. All that I ask is if you like it, share it with a friend, because that's super important too. And if it's really hard to find it, which it isn't, just simply go to your favorite podcast location, search the Rome Show podcast, and bang, you have now found the Rome Show. Before the break, we mentioned there's a lot of changes happening in Seattle. That is correct. And a lot of it comes down to, outside of Jackson Smith and Jigba, who will Geno Smith be throwing the football to next year? Because yesterday, around noon Eastern Standard Time, the Seattle Seahawks released their franchise's second best wide receiver in terms of like 5 different offensive categories in Tyler Lockett after a 10-year career in Seattle. And then on top of that, about, 45 minutes later, the franchise's other great wide receiver, DK Metcalf, requests a trade. So interesting times in Seattle. Here is first and foremost how Tyler Lockett ranks all time in Seattle Seahawks history. He is second all time in receptions, receiving yards, and receiving TDs. In time, he had 661 receptions, 8,594 receiving yards, and 61 receiving TDs. Up on your screen right now is Tyler Lockett's career numbers. I know it gets a little small sometimes when I take it off of footballreference.com, profootballreference.com. But from 2019 until 2022, he was over 1,000 yards in all 4 of those seasons. Okay. He has, in the last 2 years, in theory, fallen off, but I think that's partly because you have Jackson Smith and Jigba. You have DK Metcalf. Now, him and DK have been together since 2019. So 19, 20, 21, 22, he had over 1,000 yards. In 2023, at 894. In 2024, he had 660. Okay. He's also, in that same stretch with DK Metcalf on the field, amassed over 35 touchdowns. So the two of them together, really good. The thing is, you add a third wide receiver to that mix, but that third wide receiver, maybe based on age, time, whatever, system, quarterback, is better. It's working better. Okay. And I think for DK Metcalf, I don't know if this is a personal thing, if he doesn't agree with the new head coaching and which way the direction of the franchise is. I have no clue. Okay. Because both guys disciples of Pete Carroll prior to Seattle making that change 2 years ago. So I'm wondering if DK either A, doesn't like the way that Seattle's treating his boy, and he doesn't want this anymore. B, maybe there's some turmoil in that wide receiver room, and he's always felt some type of way about Jackson Smith and Jigba. Or C, it's just one of those things where maybe DK Metcalf, who I'll throw his stats up on the screen for you. Maybe DK Metcalf, who has also had 2 really good years in his career, or 3 kind of, but 2 in a row in 22, 23, kind of was on a downtick, had 2 injury, missed 2 games last year. Maybe the Seahawks just don't believe in both them moving forward. It's only one of those 3 things, right? And honestly, you know what? It could be 5 or 6 more that we don't even know because we're not in that building, but it happened quickly, and it's questions that Seattle's got to answer now. You know? You just went from having arguably one of the best receiving cores in the National Football League to, yes, you might have a top 10 wide receiver in the league. I feel like I would equate Jackson Smith and Jigba to Amon-Ra St. Brown type deal. Okay. Is clearly a number 1 wide receiver, but on his own, I don't believe is enough for your quarterback and your offense to get you over that hump. I mean, think about the weapons that also surround Amon-Ra St. Brown in Detroit, starting with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, then rolling to the tight end position and on and on and on, right? And I think that's the similar idea here in Seattle, okay? I think you had a really good receiver at 32 years old, and Tyler Lockett, not great, really good. I think you had a borderline pretty great wide receiver in DK Metcalf, and you had a great wide receiver in Jackson Smith and Jigba. But Tyler Lockett and Jackson Smith and Jigba are kind of similar players, and you don't have anything else. So you need more. You need more. And I think that's probably what's happening in Seattle right now. I don't know if changing the guard is the right terminology because DK Metcalf's 28. He's only been in the league for 5 years. But doing something different to believe winning will happen that way is also a possibility. So questions to be answered over the draft and over free agency when it comes to the Seattle Seahawks. Final story, all right? We'll save Jack Hughes for a little bit later. Just know that the New Jersey Devils are in some serious trouble. The fact that a player with 27 goals, 70 points, and is leading their team, who is only 4 points ahead of the team that can knock them out of the final wild card spot, Devils. It's going to be a tough stretch to finish the regular season, but baseball makes some more noise, okay? Because the Veterans Committee changed the rule to be if you receive 5 or less votes on the Veteran Committee's voting to get into the Hall of Fame, okay? Now, the Veterans Committee happens after 10 years on the regular ballot, okay? So if you're on the Veterans Committee ballot and you receive 5 or less votes total, you are removed from the ballot for 3 years, okay? After that 3 years, you're then put back on the ballot, and if you receive 3 or less votes or something like that, you are no longer eligible for the ballot, okay? Now, this might not seem like that big of a deal because you're saying to yourself, well, I mean, at this point in time, if you hadn't been voted in for the 10 years leading up to your status on the Veterans Committee, and now we're talking about having to decide after 3 years of you being off it, if you're even going to get, you're probably not a Hall of Famer. But where my annoyance comes in is when we talk about the steroid using era of baseball, okay? Primarily Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens, because if you look at the statistics from last year's Hall of Fame voting, Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens both received 5 or less total votes in terms of the Veterans Committee's ballot. So if that happens again next year, that means Bonds and Clemens will be off the ballot for 3 years and then will be put back on. Now, it has been an age-long debate. What do we do with the steroid-using all-time greats in Major League Baseball? Okay, well, here's my argument. It's always been, first and foremost, that they should be in because baseball, when the steroid era started, late 80s, early 90s, there was no stopping it. Okay, now, I think it was Troy Vincent, or I forget the guy's name, was the commissioner at the time. Bud Selig was like the assistant commissioner. But as Bud Selig took over as commissioner in 1998, over the course of the next 3 or 4 years, steroid use in baseball was rampant. And Bud Selig was allowing it to help him grow the game. The Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa, Ken Griffey Jr., Barry Bonds, greatest all-time home run hitting chases, all of those things existed. And all of those seeds were watered in the early 90s, leading into the late 90s, leading into the early 2000s, which are considered the steroid era of baseball. Now you have all these clown writers who believe that they are the gatekeepers of Major League Baseball's Hall of Fame. And so you're going to sit there and say, we're not going to allow steroid users in because of the integrity of the game, though for 15 years, it was almost like okay in Major League Baseball to be taking steroids. And on top of that, the same hypocrisy that is keeping the gates of Major League Baseball's Hall of Fame voted the commissioner of baseball during the time of the steroid era, Bud Selig, into the Hall of Fame in 2017. Now, recency bias, revisionist history is going to show you that Bud Selig created the drug testing policy to stop steroids in baseball, which is all well and good. And that was only in response to the problem that baseball had. Because Bud Selig also rode the coattails of the steroid era of Major League Baseball to bring the game back in the late 90s and the early 2000s. Because there's a real argument to believe that without steroids in baseball in the mid-late 90s to the early to mid-2000s, baseball's popularity, which is already still going down to this moment, would have been in the toilet, would have been non-existent. The goalie writes in, steroids made baseball fun to watch. Exactly right. Which is why Bud Selig let it go. Which is why Bud Selig turned a blind eye to what was going on in the clubhouses of Major League Baseball until he needed to address the problem. It wasn't a problem for the commissioner's office while it was bringing ratings, while it was breaking records, while it was changing the game, and it was making the game, quote unquote, fun again. That didn't bother Bud Selig. It only bothered Bud Selig when sponsors started to drop out. People in the media started to really get a hold of it, and people started to claim integrity of baseball, which is my favorite thing because I said it the other day, and I'll say it again. The integrity of baseball has been broken since 1919. The Black Sox scandal, broken it. Baseball has been dealing with integrity issues for the existence of time. So my hypocrisy is this rule essentially ending the opportunity for any guy that broke a record during the steroid era of baseball or any guy that people believe took steroids, i.e. Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens. Roger Clemens admitting to it, Barry Bonds never testing positive for it, but being on the remedial report and then being tested positive for the substance that covers up steroids, whatever. At the end of the day, if we were okay with it when it was top down, if the league was okay with it, why are we now telling these players that they should not be in the Hall of Fame? Let's just accept the history for what it is. This was an era of baseball, okay? This era of baseball existed. Just like the drinking, smoking, and greenies era of baseball existed, just like the wartime era of baseball existed, just like the gambling era of baseball existed. Like, this is baseball. Good, bad, or indifferent, the history of baseball has been littered with integrity issues. So rather than allow these people that don't know anything about baseball, in my opinion, to be the gatekeepers of the Hall of Fame, because I don't know why, we should say to ourselves, hey, unless they are on that banned list or on that ineligible list, or we believe they truly so hurt the integrity of the game that it's ridiculous, okay, they should be allowed in the Hall of Fame. Because let me remind any baseball fan out there right now, the only reason why we even still have a resemblance of a game that people like is because that generation of baseball, the generation that I grew up watching. Did I agree with it? No. Did I love it though? Hell yeah. Oh my God, what fun it was. And the hypocrisy is the man that led the charge, though he eventually created the rules to stop steroids, was okay with it. He didn't stop it. He watched it for the entirety of his career to get to the commissioner of baseball. So baseball, please stop picking and choosing where you think your integrity issues lie and start to realize that it's littered in the game. And so we should just rethink from the jump. Let's let Pete Rose in. Let's get Barry Bonds in. Let's get Roger Clemens in. If there's one or two others that we think should be in based on their statistics, though we thought or they did take steroids, let's put them in the Hall of Fame. Let's close the book on that era and say, hey, listen, after 2007, if you tested positive for steroids, there was a legitimate consequence to it. There was legitimately problems. But leading up to that, it was okay. General managers, strength coaches, people in locker rooms were giving it to players. But yet, those guys can't go to the Hall of Fame. Ridiculous. By the way, Kai the goalie had one more for you. If you let people do steroids, you don't have to worry about steroids. Sorry, not sorry. Play banana ball. It's better anyways. Well, I would disagree with that wholeheartedly. The game of baseball is beautiful. And much like all sports, they have to adjust what they need to do. And I don't think that necessarily taking steroids is the answer either. And nor do I think banana ball is the answer either, because though banana ball is fun, and I am a huge proponent of it, the game of baseball is elite. It is elite. And if baseball can get through this period they're in right now of just continuing to bring fun to the game, best way I could put it. I don't think it's boring. It's fast. Baseball in time-wise is just as long as a football game. It's 2.5 hours. Like, that's it. Some games might go 3. Yeah. So might a hockey game that goes to overtime or is 7-6 late in the game, or a football game that's 42-45, or a basketball game that has 15 freaking timeouts with 42 seconds left in the game. And you're like, how is there still time? Oh, a foul. Oh, only 0.7 seconds has gone off the clock. That's like watching paint dry. So every sport has the issues. You know what I'm saying? So, all right, I'm over time. The show's over. I appreciate it. Appreciate Kai the goalie writing in. I appreciate the people that tune in. Hey, you missed any part of it? YouTube, X, all the good things. Find the Rome Show podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. We're taking a night off from bananas because that's what responsible banana eaters do. They take time off on nights when they're not really sure about the games they want to pick. So come back to us tomorrow and we'll give you more picks. I'm Andrew Romanella. It's been a fun day. The Rome Show back at 7 a.m. tomorrow. Have an electric day. Peace!
Thank you for listening.